An affair under surveillance. My best friend asked me how the new camera I bought was. I turned it on to show her, only to see my husband live streaming making a baby with the nanny. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law was right beside them, unabashedly cheering them on. Have a grandson, and drive away that useless hen who can't lay eggs. Watching everything they did in the video, I let out a snort of laughter. Drive me away? They seem to have forgotten that they are my parasites. Has Henry been possessed by a ghost? My best friend exclaimed. I looked at the two figures exercising in the living room and for a moment couldn't tell if it was a ghost possession or something else. The scene was unbearable to watch, making both my friend and me increasingly awkward. My husband actually cheated on me with our housekeeper. The camera was newly installed by me, and I haven't had the chance to tell Henry yet. But even without knowing about the camera, my mother-in-law is still at home. How could the two of them be so brazen? I was puzzled. From the next bedroom came my mother-in-law's voice, "Son, put in more effort. Try to get Wendy pregnant with our family's baby as soon as possible. Then kick out that useless hen. She's always causing trouble every day." Oh right, Wendy is the one my mother-in-law brought from our hometown. I originally hired a housekeeper named Hannah, in her 40s, efficient and quiet. But since my mother-in-law moved in under the pretext of needing medical care before the new year, she has been constantly finding fault with Hannah. She complains that Hannah's cooking lacks flavor and that the groceries Hannah buys are too expensive. Not thinking about the main family, spending money recklessly, it's all because my son earns a lot, they want to swindle my son's money. Grandma grumbled. I didn't want Hannah to suffer any grievances, nor did I want to waste energy arguing with my mother-in-law over such a trivial matter, so I gave double the salary and sent Hannah to take care of my parents, thinking that once my mother-in-law left, I would call Hannah back. But within a couple of days, Wendy came to our house. Grandma said, "She's a girl from our hometown, young and capable, knows the roots and background, 100 times better than that scheming servant before." Looking at the two people in the video, so this was their plan. In just 2 or 3 minutes, the two finished their exercise, and Wendy collapsed into Henry's arms. "Henry, I'm a pure young lady following you, you can't let me down. When exactly are you going to divorce that old woman? Seeing her flaunt her power in our house every day makes me uncomfortable. I still have to serve her, don't you feel sorry watching this? Damn, doing such disgusting things in my house and then having the nerve to scold me." My best friend was even angrier than I was, "Eating your food and drinking your drinks. A family of vampires holding bowls while cursing their benefactor. Let's go back and confront these shameless bastards." I saved the recorded video and gently patted her arm to comfort her. "You're a lawyer, you've seen it all. In life, who hasn't encountered some trash? There's no need to let them give you nodules over it. If you tolerate this, then don't come to me anymore. I don't have friends as cowardly as you." My best friend pulled my arm open. I smiled faintly. She looked at me suspiciously. "Got another plan?" Just divorcing like this would be giving them an easy win. I was the one who pulled Henry out of the black soil, and now that I don't want him anymore, naturally I have to throw him back first. No, I want him to rot in the ground. I used Henry's card to take friends to the sauna, massages, and buy clothes all in one go. He quickly sent a message, "Wife, you're in such a good mood today." Back then, Henry gave me this supplementary card for the sake of a man's dignity, patting his chest and saying, "Wife, from now on, I'll support you." He didn't know that getting into that big company was thanks to the connections I arranged for him behind the scenes. I hardly ever used this card. If I accidentally swiped it twice, I would transfer the money back to him. But this time I didn't, so Henry soon sent a few screenshots of bills, saying, "The bank just called me." "Wife, was it you who used this card?" "I'm just asking, don't want it to be fraud." I sneered coldly and replied, "Yes, there will be more charges soon. I don't like spending a man's money, but now that spending can hurt him, I'll give him a little appetizer." When I got home, Wendy took the big bags from my hands. Sis, my aunt said the restaurant we ordered from yesterday is really good. She wants you to order again when you get back, so I didn't cook. I was busy with the nanny, yet she kept ordering takeout every few days. Wendy didn't mind my expression and said with a smile, Sis, why did you buy so many things? Was there a discount? Before I could stop her, she had already opened the packages and was carrying the new bag I bought on her own. Twisting in front of the mirror, she said, Sis, this bag's color is too delicate, it doesn't suit you carrying it. This wasn't the first time she did this. Several times my deliveries were opened by her, and once she even secretly used my lipstick. When I asked her to pay me back, Wendy teared up and said, Sis, I just never saw it before. I wanted to try it. I really didn't know it cost several hundred. My husband advised, you don't care about a few bucks, why make things hard for a country girl? My mother-in-law also said, we're all from the same village, if word gets back, what will happen to my old reputation? My concessions only gave them more grounds to offend me further. This pink is indeed a bit frivolous, not worthy of my wife's dignified temperament. Henry pretended to pull me close. I felt nauseous and dodged him. Do you really think so? I thought you would like this kind of playful style. My mother-in-law saw that I had bought so many things, but nothing for her and her son. She looked displeased, cleared her throat twice, and in a scolding tone said, Lena, it's not easy for this man to earn money outside. As a wife, you should cherish him. Those things are enough, there's no need to keep buying clothes and bags all day long. You're already married, who are you trying to impress? Auntie, does my new bag look good on me? Wendy spun around with my new bag on her back, deliberately closing the distance between me and Henry. Looks good, my mother-in-law beamed. Makes you look younger by a few years. Anything looks good on you, unlike some people who, at their age, only know how to fix themselves up and have no idea how to cherish their own husband and live a life together. I am 5 years older than Henry, and my mother-in-law has always minded my age. She thinks her son is a catch, and if I didn't come from a family with some means, I would never have caught her eye. On top of that, Henry flatters himself, vaguely hinting to my mother-in-law that all this is earned by him. My mother-in-law naturally assumed that I was supported by her son. Henry looked embarrassed and, fearing I would get angry, said, Don't take it to heart, Mom just said that. I curled my lips into a smile. What Mom said makes sense, at our age, we really shouldn't be dressing up. My mother-in-law proudly rolled her eyes and snorted, That's more like it. A daughter-in-law should be properly disciplined to be decent. From now on, you should learn how to serve us nan. If this woman doesn't. Mom, I had originally ordered a few sets of clothes for you, but since that's the case, I'll return them all. I took out my phone. And that beauty salon you often go to, it costs over $1,000 each time. At your age, there's no need to maintain that face. I'll tell them to cancel the card. Why should you cancel it? Isn't the beauty treatment paid for by you? My mother-in-law screamed. At first, I took her for a beauty treatment once. After learning the price, she sat on the floor crying and yelling for a refund. Later, when she found out it was my mom who got me the membership card, she went twice a week, rain or shine. My mother-in-law glared and said, I raised my son. I deserve to enjoy life now. You're the one who needs to save money and live frugally. You haven't even had a child, so how dare you stand tall at home? What right do you have? When I dress up to go out, it's to make Henry look good too. You don't go out, and you can't even speak properly when you meet people. At home, you rely on the nanny. For small tasks like massages, Wendy can handle it. I looked at Wendy, who was still carrying the bag, and said, This bag really doesn't suit me. I plan to return it tomorrow, but since you've already opened the packaging and it can't be returned, you'll have to compensate at the purchase price. $23,000, deduct it from your salary? Wendy sat on the floor rubbing her feet and crying out loud, much like my mother-in-law. Aren't you bullying me? I'm working as a nanny in your house, and that's because of my aunt and Henry. Otherwise, with your attitude, you'd have to carry me in a sedan chair, but you wouldn't even come to your own home. You do know you're a nanny, right? I looked at her coldly as she cried and fussed. My previous nanny had a bachelor's degree, a professional qualification certificate for domestic service, knew how to care for furniture, leather goods, and clothes, could cook Chinese, Western, French, and Japanese cuisine, had 10 years of driving experience, and could even drive me to and from work. What about you? Wendy was a comfortable nanny, waking up later than me every morning. When asked to cook, she was reluctant. I like Western food, but she said she didn't know how to make it, only the hometown dishes that my mother-in-law and Henry liked. My mother-in-law defended her, "We country folks aren't so particular, as long as you can eat your fill, that's enough." Henry advised me not to bother with them and to just eat whatever I liked. I ordered takeout, but my mother-in-law kept saying I was wasting food while taking it to her own room. Eating this unhealthy stuff every day, no wonder you can't get pregnant. Usually, when the family buys some expensive seafood or fruit, Wendy eats more than anyone else. She even smiles and says, "Sis, I'm still growing, so don't mind me eating a lot." Wendy never takes the initiative to tidy up the house at home, she just sits with my mother-in-law, cracking sunflower seeds and watching TV. When I occasionally ask her to do something, she does it reluctantly, saying, "Such a small thing, sis, you could easily do it yourself." I wanted to fire her several times, but Henry always persuaded me, just think of her as a spiritual comforter for Mom. Wendy lives like a grandmother in my house, yet at this moment, she still feels extremely wronged. Grabbing my mother-in-law's clothes, "Auntie, when you took me out, you promised my dad you'd treat me well. If my dad finds out I'm being treated like this, how will you explain it to him?" I heard Wendy's family has many brothers. In the countryside, the family with the most men is the toughest. My mother-in-law, being a widowed mother guarding her only child, naturally felt insecure. She was trembling with anger, pointing her finger at my nose, ready to scold me. I didn't give her the chance and said, "Either compensate me or leave. I'm hiring a nanny, not supporting a memorial tablet." After saying that, I went into the bedroom. My mother-in-law was screaming in the living room, "Henry, you hit her for me. A bag costing over 20,000. How much is she really worth? Does she even deserve it?" It took more than an hour before Henry came in, exhausted, trying to calm both of them down. I just talked to Mom and Wendy, and indeed, they were in the wrong today. Henry forced a smile, "My money is meant for my wife to spend. You must be tired from shopping today." He attentively rubbed my shoulders. "The salesperson called me again just now, saying if we don't pay the deposit soon, such a good floor might not be available anymore. We recently set our sights on an apartment, a spacious flat with a sea view where you can watch the sunrise from the living room in the morning." "Let's talk about it later," I replied dismissively. "My dad has already invested funds in a project, so we can't come up with that much cash right now." Henry's face changed. This was all agreed upon. If we don't buy it, how am I supposed to face the salespeople? I sneered inwardly, thinking it was all because that saleswoman was pretty. The more I refused to buy the house, the uglier Henry's expression became. He even started blaming me. "Honey, you're being a bit too much today. You have to be careful how you treat people. After all, Mom found someone to take care of us, and you're making me and Mom lose face. Do me a favor and go apologize to Mom and Wendy later." A harmonious family makes everything prosper. I looked at that once handsome face, not knowing when it had become so greasy. At the alumni reunion, I returned to share my experience as an outstanding graduate, and Henry was the host. He stood out in the crowd with his good looks. I like everything pleasing to the eye, a good-looking boy without much scheming. He was far more attractive to me than those men with 100 tricks up their sleeves. I bought him luxury cars, a foreign-style house, and arranged a decent job for him, so he would seem worthy of me. I've never cared about spending money. To gain a better experience, I pay with money, and he returns emotional value and a presentable face. It was supposed to be a fair trade. But a wolf in sheep's clothing, once successful, becomes arrogant. He got carried away. Your face? Your face means making your wife suffer to indulge an outsider? I laughed bitterly. Whether my family is harmonious or not, do we have to look at Wendy the nanny's expression? Henry's face stiffened, then he struck what he thought was his most handsome pose. Lena, all people are born equal. How can you look down on the working class? Has she been working? I retorted. Since your mom and Wendy came here, haven't they both gained at least 10 pounds? Since when did you become so aggressive? If you keep talking like this, I might really get angry. Henry made a move to leave, seemingly waiting for me to stop him. Oh. I get it now. He's never been hungry or seen anything like this before, so I just got a bit more intense in playing, and he thought I loved him so much that I couldn't pull myself away. Henry has earned quite a bit from work these past few years, plus what he freeloaded from me, which should have been enough to secure his livelihood for the rest of his life. But now it seems dogs don't deserve to be full. When he saw I was ignoring him, feeling bored, he pretended to coax me with a few words. I agreed not to fire Wendy for the time being and promised to go look at the house soon. Henry smiled smugly, thinking he had me perfectly under his thumb. That's more like it, wife. I don't expect you to understand the hardships I face outside, but I do hope that as my wife, you can hold down the home front well. If the backyard is always on fire, how can I focus on fighting on the front lines? And about my father-in-law, tell him at this age it's better to play it safe, no more risky investments. If there are resources to share, share them with me. After all, you're his only daughter, and when I inherit the family business, I'll definitely take good care of them. What audacity! I told my parents everything exactly as it happened, and they were ready to rush over from another city to back me up. My original family is strange yet wonderful. We each live our own lives without interfering with each other's freedom, but when it really counts, we become a strong support and defense line. I told them to be patient, had my dad approach a project on behalf of the company, and asked my mom to help me borrow a set of expensive jewelry. Then I asked my best friend to get me a tough team of lawyers to discreetly handle some of the assets under my name after marriage. After that, I contacted a reliable private detective. I was busy as a bee, and Henry and Wendy weren't idle either, they tried every possible position. I never really understood why Henry chose Wendy. Henry himself came from a rural background but despised everything about the countryside. He felt he was just born into the wrong family, which explained his more than 20 years of poverty. Someone who prides himself on being extraordinary, shouldn't he be using that decent-looking face of his to climb higher? My best friend once said something that hit me hard, to a dog, the shit outside smells better than the meat at home. One time, watching the surveillance footage, Henry was happily pressing down on Wendy's head as she worked hard. You're way better than Lena. This is how a woman should be, obedient, compliant, and useful. Henry needs to find a shortcut to money from me, while trying to find his man's dignity from Wendy. Shameful and ridiculous. The detective told me that Henry has been paying close attention to the project my father is involved in recently. I called Henry, let's go, let's look at the house. When we went to see the house, both mother-in-law and Wendy were dressed up to the nines. Buying a house is such a big deal, I, as the mother, have to make the final decision. The mother-in-law said arrogantly. Wendy looked at the diamond necklace around my neck and whispered to the mother-in-law. The mother-in-law rolled her eyes and said, Lena, you're wearing a string of glass beads yourself, how can you have the nerve to call your mother barren naked? Sis, that set of jewelry in your drawer looks really nice, take it out and let Auntie wear it. Wendy was like a sly fox stealing chickens. You're rummaging through my room? I glanced at her sideways. Didn't you ask me to clean up? Wendy looked like her tail had been stepped on, unable to hide her guilt. I had deliberately placed the jewelry at the very back. Without searching thoroughly, it was impossible to find. What do you mean yours? It all belongs to my son. As his mother, if I want to wear it, I will. Grandma was being unreasonable. Hurry up and get it out for me. The jewelry isn't mine, it was lent to me by my mom for the company to use, I said. Always bragging that the family is rich and keeps borrowing from each other. Wendy sneered and whispered. Forget it, Mom. If you want to wear something, just have Lena find you her necklace. Gold or diamonds, you can pick whatever you like. Henry was in a hurry to book the room, after all, this time the house was going to be under his name. Seeing Henry speak up for me, Wendy was so jealous she almost burst out, Sis, you don't want Auntie to wear it, afraid she'll outshine you, right? The mother-in-law, stirred up by her, dug out that set of jewelry under Wendy's guidance and happily put it on herself. Auntie, you wear this big necklace. You can totally pull it off. These 2 small earrings are for me. Wearing them makes me look cute, and I won't embarrass Henry when we go out, right? Wendy busily dressed herself up. This set of jewelry is very expensive, are you really going to wear it? I asked coldly. If anything goes wrong, who will compensate? Things that fall into the money pit. My son will pay. It's not like he can't afford it. Grandma rolled her eyes dramatically. Let's go, wife. My mom means well, she's just afraid we'll lose face. If anything happens, your husband will take care of it. Let's go quickly. Henry wished he could get the property deed with his name on it the next second. On the way, Henry frowned, this isn't the way to the sales office. I'll take you to see a better one, a villa. I curled my lips. Henry was, of course, very satisfied with the villa area, after all, it was half more expensive than the one we originally liked. There's not even a place downstairs to do square dancing, why buy this? Grandma was dissatisfied. She has recently become obsessed with square dancing, and whenever she sees an old man, she tells him how successful, hard-working, and filial her son is. Little did she know, in this whole neighborhood, which family's children aren't better than her son. It's just that the overall quality is high, and no one pays attention to her narrow-minded boasting. Mom, when the time comes, the biggest room will be yours. Henry, the sales guide, looked at the expensive jewelry and called the elderly lady my grandma repeatedly, making my mother-in-law lift her chin proudly. Then he courteously said to Wendy, Madam, you clearly have a blessed appearance. Wendy smiled without arguing, instead leaning close to Henry and shaking his arm, Henry, whichever room I stay in, I like the one on the sunny side, it's nice and close to my aunt, so I can take care of her in time. She was quite good at choosing that was the children's room. That won't do, I laughed out loud, how can a nanny live there? As soon as I said this, the salesperson immediately realized their mistake, and even the person who had been constantly fanning Wendy quickly withdrew. Why can't I stay? There are so many rooms and you can't even use them all, so why can't I stay? Wendy said firmly. Then which one will you give me? I'm not staying in that small room. None of the rooms, I said. I will have someone else clean this house. There's no place for you. The room you wanted is reserved for my child. Child? As soon as I said this, the 3 of them all widened their eyes. You're pregnant? Henry's expression was strange, as if he was both happy and guilty. It's been 2 months already. I took the ultrasound report out of my bag. 2 months ago, on the night before I went abroad for a trip, I was close to Henry for the last time. At that time, I still didn't know about the disgusting things he had done. My mother-in-law was the first to snatch it away, saying, impossible. How could it be? Wendy's face, which was clearly a shade lighter, couldn't hide her despair. Her hands were even trembling, and she murmured, how could this be? Henry took the paper, his expression turning excited. He carefully read through it, then rushed over and picked me up. Great. I'm going to be a dad. At that moment, I saw his face seem to return to the innocence of our college days. If he hadn't betrayed me, maybe I would really have lived a happy life, with no worries about food and clothing, a beautiful wife, and adorable children. Unfortunately, he is already tainted. Henry was very excited and immediately wanted to book that villa as a gift for the child in my belly. He had enough money to pay the deposit. This was also what we had agreed on. I would use my father's investment in the new project as an excuse to have him pay the deposit, and I would cover the remaining balance. The name would be his. Henry wanted to pay, but his mother was unhappy and pulled him aside, saying, "So much money. Let her pay." "Why are you paying? Are you stupid? Lena doesn't have cash on hand right now." Henry whispered to his mother, "I've already checked." His voice lowered, and I pretended to put on my headphones to listen to music. The mother-in-law said that a woman should prepare her husband's clothes every day. So, I slipped a miniature recording device into Henry's pocket, and at this moment, a clear voice came through the earphones. "You spent the money, so what will you use to build a house for Wendy's family later?" Grandma whispered, "Your uncle is still waiting." "Mom, Lena's dad invested all the cash into a project, and that project is guaranteed to make a profit." Henry couldn't hide his smile. "When the time comes, with just one look from your son, won't Lena give me all the money to make up for it? She's already pregnant with my child, so in the future, everything in her family will belong to us father and son." "But how many years will that take?" Grandma was dissatisfied. "That woman Lena is so pretentious. We can't even be sure the child she bears will be loyal to us. Wendy is better steady and reliable. Besides, how is this villa any different from the village chief's little house? With this money, couldn't you go back and build as many houses as you want?" This time, Henry didn't listen to his mother and paid the deposit, afraid the duck he had in his hand would fly away. "After all, this house isn't something anyone can just buy. I used connections to get it for several million less than the market price." Wendy looked at me with eyes full of jealousy and unwillingness. "Sis, at your age, is it still okay to have children? Don't push yourself, so you don't end up with a double tragedy." "Wendy, you don't need to worry about my family's matters." I was calm and unhurried, not taking her nonsense seriously at all. "You're just a nanny sent by my mother-in-law, an outsider." Wendy was so angry she gritted her teeth, yet she was helpless. She could only vent her anger on the salesperson. "Hey! You sell such expensive houses. Don't you even know to pour water for God?" Her domineering attitude made me feel like I had traveled back to a feudal society where people devour each other. Wendy's face was full of annoyance, but the moment the salesperson brought the water, it turned into a pool of spring water. He was a stunningly handsome man, different from Henry, with sun-kissed skin and a strong build. His name was Ryan, and his voice was seductive. "Miss, with such beautiful pigeon blood, getting angry just isn't pretty." Wendy was intoxicated by being called Mississippi. I was pregnant, and Henry returned to his previous considerate self, occasionally asking about my well-being and always subtly probing whether he could be included in his father's investment. "Dad, who else can I count on besides myself? I'm almost 30 this year and still working for others," Henry said with righteous confidence. "If I'm not allowed to handle company business now, do you expect a woman like you to be the one to show up in public later?" When his mother gave birth to him, she must have pinched his brain. I really appreciate my own wisdom for never revealing my true strength to anyone. Letting everyone think I'm just a second-generation rich kid who lives off the family without doing anything is the best kind of camouflage. One time when he was pestering me, I finally sighed, "All right, my dad actually said if you want to join, he could get you a share, but..." According to Henry's investigation, this project is dripping with profit. At this moment, he was so anxious he was practically drooling, "But what? Hurry up and say it. After all, the shares are limited. If you add my dad, someone has to give up some. Besides, do you even have the money to invest?" I waved my hand. Henry looked troubled. "Why not just have Dad give me some directly?" It was like a beggar throwing his bowl in my face. "Forget it, isn't it good enough that you don't lack food or drink? At worst, people will just whisper behind your back that you rely on your wife's family. This sentence hit Henry right in the heart. A guy like him, who lives off others, always thinks he's doing it with superhuman charm. What he wants most is to one day trample me and my family underfoot. Henry walked away with a face ashen as iron. My phone vibrated. It was Ryan, and lying shyly in his arms was Wendy, with pigeon blood-red earrings clearly visible on her ears. As expected, those who don't spend money aren't the ones. I asked a friend to help me find a special kind of man who women can't refuse for work, and I didn't expect to get one so quickly. The next day, Wendy seemed a bit distracted. I deliberately asked my mother-in-law at the dining table, "Mom, did you wear that set of jewelry again?" My mother-in-law smirked, "Who cares about that junk? A few stones, real rich people all wear big gold chains. I wouldn't take it even if it was given to me for free. Wait a couple of days, I'll buy you a 10-pound gold chain. You can wear it back to the village and show those who used to look down on our family." Henry was very proud. The boss of the company where he works contacted me privately and said Henry has been frequently absent without reason lately. If it weren't for my sake, he would have been fired long ago. Then that's strange, why are those earrings missing? I said, staring at Wendy. Wendy, did you see them? When did I ever see them? Wendy struck first, throwing down her chopsticks. I work like a beast of burden in your house, diligently and earnestly, and you still doubt my character. I'm done. I want to go home. The mother-in-law immediately put on a cold face, 2 lousy coins and you think you can act all high and mighty. Open your mouth and spout nonsense. Are you jealous that Wendy is younger than you? Trying to push Wendy out? That's why you're spewing such baseless crap. Henry frowned as well. Since that unpleasant fallout the other day, his attitude towards me has plummeted. Lena, how can you casually slander Wendy like that? Apologize to Wendy immediately. Wendy, I'll ask you one more time, was it you who took it? I asked again. If you tell the truth now, everything can still be saved. Lena, you're full of shit. I'd rather bash my head against the ground here than take your pathetic nonsense. Wendy rolled on the floor. At that moment, there was a knock on the door. Outside were the police. We're looking for Wendy, she is suspected of stealing a large sum. I had reported it, and the police reviewed the community surveillance footage. The high-definition cameras captured Wendy leaving with the pigeon blood ruby from multiple angles. Yet she still denied it, saying, I brought a fake one. I bought it myself just for fun. But she couldn't produce any purchase records, while I had the full footage from the camera showing her taking the earrings from my drawer. My mother-in-law was the first to lose her temper. You actually installed cameras at home to spy on us. We're family, who are you trying to guard against? This is a slap in my face. Henry quickly caught on. When did you install the surveillance? And where else did you put them? Lena, how could you do this? This is an invasion of our privacy. I'm installing surveillance cameras in my own home to prevent theft, and I actually caught a thief. Is there a problem with that? I looked coldly at the 3 people in front of me. There was a price appraisal issued by a jewelry store, valuing the pair of pigeon blood rubies at $1 million. If Wendy couldn't repay the money, she would face imprisonment. In desperation, Wendy grabbed Henry's arm. Henry, you have to save me. I only wore it out twice, who would have thought it would get lost? Such a tiny stone, how could it be worth that much? It must be that bitch Lena jealous of me. Henry shook off her hand. Wendy then turned to beg her mother-in-law. Aunt, if you don't help me, how am I supposed to explain this to my father? The mother-in-law held Henry's arm. Son, quickly think of a way. What can I do? So much money. Where am I supposed to find it? Henry frowned and rubbed his forehead. How could he take on debt for Wendy? Henry, I'm carrying your child. You can't just ignore me," Wendy shouted hoarsely. Looking at Henry's utterly shattered expression, I pretended to be shocked, desperate, and furious. At that moment, my acting could rival an Oscar-winning actress. "Henry, I love you so much. How can you do this to me?" I covered my face and squeezed out tears. "I'm still carrying your child. How am I supposed to live from now on?" My deep affection instantly made Henry feel like he had a bargaining chip. I loved him so much. But the jewelry had to be compensated for. While crying, I reminded him of the house I had given him before, which could just be used to offset the debt. Under Wendy's threats and my mother-in-law's nagging, Henry gritted his teeth and agreed. After all, in his eyes, it was just moving money from one hand to the other. Sooner or later, it would still be his. Henry wanted me to withdraw the case. "We are one flesh and blood as husband and wife. Let's just say the earrings were a moment of foolishness and a mistake. Consider it compensation to Wendy. From now on, I will treat you well." After leaving the police station, my mother-in-law pulled Henry aside and whispered, "That one in her belly, we don't even know if it's a boy or a girl yet, but Wendy is different. Wendy's big hips clearly show she's meant to have a boy." During the few days waiting for the property transfer, Wendy simply shamelessly acted openly. Even my mother-in-law, who always said she felt nauseous from the smell of cooking oil, started cooking big meals with plenty of meat and fish. I didn't eat any of it. I had specially ordered nutritious meals, and all the excess nutrition naturally went into Wendy's stomach. Unlucky. The child will definitely be an unlucky girl. My mother-in-law scolded me while adding more meat to Wendy's plate. The moment the house was officially transferred, Henry still seemed angry, complaining to me, "You two are dividing things so clearly even though you're married. Lena, you're getting more materialistic by the day." I looked at him and said, "It's not appropriate for you, a freeloader, to say that, is it? But yes, we do need to be clear because we're about to stop being husband and wife. Let's get a divorce, Henry." The lawyer team my best friend helped me assemble acted decisively. The divorce was finalized swiftly. I hardly had any assets under my name, and I was pregnant. Henry was the one at fault in the marriage, so he basically walked away with nothing. Even after the verdict was delivered, he was still shouting, "The car and house I paid back not long ago. I should get a share of them." But that was compensation for the jewelry borrowed from my mom's company, and it was never in my name. Faced with this harsh reality, Henry started playing the role of the sentimental man again, kneeling and begging me bitterly. I only made a mistake that every man in the world would make. I sneered coldly at him, "You're nothing but a freeloader living off others." Henry, humiliated and furious, pointed at my nose and cursed, "Lena, let's see how long you can stay arrogant. You don't even know, do you? I hijacked your dad's project. I trampled on your dad and took all the shares. Your family will soon be nothing in front of me." While I pretended to be shocked, Henry was especially gleeful. "Women shouldn't go to school or study, so they don't develop useless thoughts. You probably think Wendy is inferior to you in every way, but let me tell you, women should be like that. Foolishly obedient, listening to their husband's orders. Lena, it was me who dumped you. I will marry Wendy. The child in her belly will be born out of love, while the one in your belly is a bastard from birth. Of course, you can also choose to abort it. After all, it's only 6 or 7 months old, just with hands and feet." Henry looked at me with contempt. "You think I love you? You're just the prey I carefully selected. I've already stepped on you to reach the resources I wanted." It turns out that encounter on campus wasn't a coincidence, it was a conspiracy. "Very well, thank you, Henry, so I won't feel any guilt about what comes next." After giving birth to my daughter, I posted a moment on social media, showing my daughter's little hand holding my finger. Wendy commented below, "A worthless wild girl dares to show off." Henry then sent me an electronic invitation. He and Wendy are getting married. Sorry, is my happiness bothering you? When I appeared at the wedding, Henry raised his proud profile at me. My bride is no longer you. Is your heart breaking now? Too bad there's no cure for regret in this world. How's your dad's company? Can it withstand the sweeping changes I'm about to make? Lena, actually, if you beg me now, maybe I'll consider leaving you a place in the new home, giving you the honor of serving me alongside Wendy. Not far away, Wendy, with her big belly, came over and wrapped her arm around Henry's, as if protecting her beloved treasure. Lena, from now on, I'm no longer your family's little maid. I will live more and more brilliantly. Until I dazzle your eyes. And my former mother-in-law also came over with an air of superiority. Lena, later when my son gets married, I hope you can control your emotions, don't cry and plead, and don't do anything as disgraceful as trying to steal the groom. You came empty-handed to the wedding, how shameless of you. Wendy sneered. I rolled my eyes at them. Who said I came empty-handed? I curled my lips into a smile. I clapped my hands, and 2 rows of bodyguards appeared behind me, well trained to control the scene. Today, there are villagers from the hometown as well as Henry's business partners. I strode onto the stage, grabbed the host's microphone, and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the disgraceful banquet of the scumbag man, the shameless woman, and the old beast. What happens next? I hope you all enjoy your tea and snacks, and spread it to every corner of the land." With a snap of my fingers, the entire venue went dark. But instead of the wedding promotional video, the screen was now showing a censored recording titled "Hubby is Awesome." Amidst the uproar, Henry, restrained and veins bulging on his neck, shouted, "This is a violation of human rights. I'm going to sue you. Besides, Wendy and I are already married. So what if we've done these things? You're just jealous because you can't have my heart, Wendy. Lena. You're despicable." I made a shushing gesture at him. "Don't rush, keep watching, we'll all be shocked together." The scene switched to a recording of Wendy and Ryan. Wendy's face was flushed red in a distorted upward shot. "You have more tricks than Henry. Even more impressive. Once I get his money, I'll come for you. These earrings will be our token of love." Henry looked as if he couldn't believe it, staring at Wendy, who was also restrained. "You, of all people, dare to do this?" Wendy's face turned pale. I laughed and said, "She just made a mistake that every man in the world would make. You despicable woman. You have ill intentions. What good does it do you to destroy the happiness of my son and daughter-in-law? I know you can't bear to part with my son. You want him to change his mind, but keep dreaming." The mother-in-law was still shouting. I clicked my tongue and said, "Do you know what question I've been thinking about? You treat Wendy too well, even better than you treat Henry. You are willing to sacrifice Henry's interests to protect Wendy. You want someone with more potential to marry a person who didn't even finish middle school." Facing the crowd, I said, "Doesn't everyone find this strange?" Amid the murmurs, Wendy's father's face turned ashen, and the old lady's face went pale. "But if I revealed 2 certificates that you and Wendy are mother and daughter, then everything makes sense." The 2 certificates, one confirmed that Wendy and the old lady are mother and daughter, the other confirmed that Henry and the old lady have no mother-son relationship. Wendy's mother jumped up with a shout and started pounding her father. "You bastard picked up off the street. The child is your damn illegitimate. You disgust me right under my nose. I'll kill you all." Wendy's father dodged while saying, "I just made one mistake in the world." Before he could finish, Wendy's mother grabbed him by the crotch. "You son-in-law. How dare you say that to me?" At her command, several sons in the house all joined in beating their father. Wendy and the old lady both lowered their heads, showing they had long since recognized each other. How could this happen? How could this happen? Henry's eyes were bloodshot as he looked at the old lady. You've been using me all along. You wanted to raise me as your daughter's child husband. You old beast." The next second, he burst into a mad laugh again. "I knew I wasn't born into such poverty. Where did you drag me from? Tell me. My parents must be wealthy tycoons. In your dreams. Your real mother is a wandering prostitute. If it weren't for me taking you in, you'd probably be begging somewhere. The old woman shouted hoarsely, I raised you. I am your real mother. It's only right for you to be filial to me. You're talking nonsense. Henry shouted in despair. With a glance from me, the bodyguards loosened their grip. Chaos erupted on the stage, presenting the audience with a spectacular rural brawl. In the midst of the fight, Wendy was bleeding between her legs, crying out, Mom! Save me! Save me! The old woman's eyes reddened. Wendy! Hold on. You must fight for me. I never gave birth to a son back then. You must have a son, ah! Before she could finish, Henry grabbed her hair and slammed her head to the ground. I stood in the middle of the circle of bodyguards, watching the commotion with interest. When my daughter was 4 years old, Henry was released from prison. At that time, he beat the old woman into paralysis. With no one to care for her, she died covered in sores, surrounded by flies. And Wendy died on the operating table of the Child Protection Agency, truly 2 lives lost. Henry couldn't get into the neighborhood, so he knelt in front of the gate, repeatedly slapping his own face. Lena. It's all my fault for being blind. Wife. Please forgive me. He threw himself at the front of my car to block me. I beg you, for the sake of the child. Give me one more chance. The deposit for the villa is still there. And the business I invested in. I will definitely succeed. I will make sure you and the child live a better life than now. I looked at him through the car window and gave a faint smile. Henry, the villa project was abandoned, the developer ran off overseas with the money. And that business of yours, you borrowed from loan sharks, didn't you? That business was just a money trap bubble. We should thank your shamelessness for stepping up, allowing our family's assets to escape unscathed. We're married, so I'll give you one last piece of advice, hurry up and hide, like a rat in the gutter. All those debt collectors are waiting for you to get out of prison. Henry's face grew paler with every word I spoke. Lena, you've been scheming against me all along? I snorted, disdainful of answering. Finally, he gritted his teeth and said, What about my daughter? I'm her father. When she grows up and inherits everything from you, she still has to support me. Henry, don't you know you have oligospermia? Oh right, I didn't let them tell you during the premarital checkup. I curled my lips. You could never give me a child. To me, you're just a pretty toy, but unfortunately, you dirted yourself. You're lying. Impossible. Henry's eyes widened, refusing to face reality. I could only sigh and roll down the car window. When Henry saw my daughter's face clearly, his pupils trembled. Soon, the debt collectors I had notified arrived, and Henry was taken away by them. As for what happened to him afterward, I don't know. All I know is that he will never come to disturb my daughter and me again. Mom, who is that person? My daughter asked me with her deep blue eyes. I brushed her high, fair nose and said, a loser. Henry was never a candidate to be the father of my child. I chose my child from an overseas sperm bank, and all I know is that her father is a blonde, blue-eyed handsome guy with an IQ of 180. My life has always been under my own control. There have been occasional twists, but I have never gone off course.